presentation for other purposes. I hope
Okay.
it's okay for everyone. So please, Robert.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation and the honor to be able to present here for in the name of the project UNICOM. The title is Opportunities for Revival of Appreciation of the ATC Classification, resulting from what still needs to happen, the implementation of ISO/SEN standards for global identification. First, my conflict of interest slide. Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. I am an academic researcher, and I do not think I have a conflict of interest for this presentation, but I want to specify that I work as a consultant for the European Institute of Innovation through Health Data. That's a non-profit European association, and my work is in Horizon 2020 action from the European Union as a work package leader. A short overview of what I'm going to talk about. The title says Decline in Appreciation of ATC, and I would like to point at the reasons for that, the correct reasons and the less correct reasons. And then I will talk a little bit about the move to the new global system for medicinal products. And the bulk of the presentation will be about the promises of an integration of IDMP and ATC, IDMP being identification of medicinal products. I will talk about the methodology of that integration and then about the benefits for the scientific community and for clinical care. And I will end with some take-home messages. First, the reasons for decline in appreciation in ATC classification. Well, one of the critics for ATC has always been the lack of granularity for combination products, that some combinations are not fully specified, and that is sometimes seen as a hinder. It is perfectly all right for the purpose of drug utilization research, but for pharmacovigilance or for computer decision support and safety applications, it might not be enough. Some DDDs are missing or delayed. There are some difficulties in dealing with the changes in the ATC classification over time. And the ATC classification, the support of the classification and the support of the center has been limited. But the main reason, I think, is that the misuse of ATC classification in EPSOS, they use the ATC classification to identify substances in products instead of seeing it as a label for a class of drugs containing the same moiety. And that has caused a lot of difficulties and de-appreciation of ATC, while in fact it was because of the researchers and the civil servants used the ATC for a purpose that it was not intended for. And it's a bad craftsman who blames his tools. So despite the difficulties, ATC remains the cornerstone of drug utilization research and is crucial for the exposure assessment in pharmacoepidemiology. So now there is a move to a new global system of medicinal product identification from ISO/SEN. ISO/SEN are the two organizations in the world that create all the standards, for instance, for electric outlets and for feeding cell phones, and trying to standardize it as much as possible. So ISO/SEN has also looked at how medicine should be identified and created some standards. I will show that. To understand what these standards promise is that we ask the question, what if we would be able to interpret the content of any medicinal product from any country in the world, in any country in the world? The basis for this tremendous ambition is laid down in 5 ISO standards for the identification of medicinal products. And this is a link to a brochure that explains in 10 pages, well-illustrated pages for lay public, what this is all about. Here I've given an example. Here you see the medicines of Belgium, Norway, and Greece that contain amlodipine, that are oral, and that have a strength of 5 milligram. You see a long list for Greece, a somewhat smaller list for Belgium, and a small list for Norway. And we also see that the number of medicinal product packs in each of these countries is different, and that this amlodipine oral comes in 3 forms: amlodipine basylate capsule hard, and amlodipine basils, and amlodipine maleate. So this makes it possible to identify, if you have a Belgian product, identify in Greece and Norway the exact similar drug, and to recognize drugs from other countries that are brought into the country. In the 5 ISO standards, 3 basic elements need to be identified precisely: the substance, and more precisely the substance with the role of precise active ingredient. And that means that it's not enough to say that this medicine contains amlodipine. You have to specify the modifier. You have to say it's amlodipine basylate or maleate. The dose form, and for the dose form we use the granular administrable dose form expressed as a standard EDQM, standard terms of EDQM, European Directorate of Quality of Medicine, which has now become a global standard. And then the strength in a normalized expression. Example for a pharmaceutical product is amlodipine basylate capsule hard 5 milligram. That's a global label that allows us to recognize in the different countries the medicinal products that precisely relate to these 3 elements. The ambition is supported by the ISO standardization bodies. It has the full support of EMA, FDA, and ECCH, the International Council of Harmonization, which brings Europe, Japan, and US together for pharmaceutical matters. The WHO Collaborating Center for Pharmacovigilance, Uppsala Monitoring Center, and the European project UNICOM. I will talk a little bit more about that. Substance is a key element, and together with the dose form, it determines the normalization of strength expression of medicinal products. And substance with dose form and strength also determine the effect of the medication. Something more about UNICOM project. That's the mission statement. It's helping to ensure that any medicine and what it contains can be accurately identified anywhere in the world. And we are working to improve the patient safety and enable better care for all. This is the wedding cake of the 5 standards of ISO IDMP suite of standards. 1 standard to identify medicinal product, 1 for pharmaceutical product, 1 for substances, and 1 for dose forms, routes of administration, units of presentation, and packaging. And finally, 1 for the measurements, that's the UCOM standard. Yeah. So these 5 standards govern the entire thing. Together they form a very complex ontology, but as I said, the basic elements are these three things: the substance, the dose form, and the strength. It's a huge European project, Horizon 2020 Action Program, 40 partners, 20 million euros to be spent in 4 years, and it will end in December 23. And there are 12 work packages, and I have the honor to lead work package 8, which is about IDMP and clinical care in research. This very big project helps national agencies and drug database producers to standardize their information by implementing the IDMP standards so that national brands can be identified internationally. A little bit more on the work on substances. This is a meticulous effort, cleaning effort of all types of substances, the chemical ones, the biologicals, the peptides. It is led by BfArM Germany and the EU Substance Register, EUSRS, from the European Medicinal Agency, EMA, together with the Food and Drug Administration, and it results in a new European ID for substances that will be available for the regulatory agencies, NCAs, National Competent Authorities for Marketing Authorization, through the SPOR terminology server, which is a terminology server set up by the EU for substances, products, organizations, and references. And there will also be soon a global substance identifier. So one identifier that is for the whole world for each of the substances. And it provides a final list of modifiers for the active moieties, if there is any modifier. Not all moieties have a modifier. They're checked against pharmacovigilance records for current use in the world. They follow international non-proprietary nomenclature where possible. So, Mohammed has already alluded to that. They provide detailed and often confidential information for regulatory purposes, but they are preparing a public export of the relevant substance details, such as links to the different library systems and coding systems and molecular mass of the substances. For the work on dose form, there has been a world agreement to adopt the European ADQM, standardized terms of the European Directorate of Quality of Medicine, as the global standard. And this is for pharmaceutical dose form, for administrable dose form, unit of presentation, route of administration. The standard terms of Europe are now the global standard for dose form and for all the references. It is now well supported by a publicly available knowledge base with definition of terms, with provision of new tools to identify the administrable dose form, which is the basis for the pharmaceutical identifier construction. And it deals with transformation from manufactured to administrable dose form. For instance, a syrup in powder needs to be transformed to a liquid side solution for oral solution, and so it changes from manufactured dose form to administrable dose form, and we want the administrable dose form, forming the basis for the European SPOR terminology server. So that allows us and assures a more granular identification of medicines than the US norm system, which is not so granular. IDQM, for instance, has more than 400 different dose forms, while Eric's norm is less than 200. Work on strength expression. Standardizing the expression of strength is a tricky issue. Shall we talk about 125 milligram per 5 milliliter, or shall we talk about 55 milligram per 1 milliliter? All this needs to be standardized. There's a global discussion and coordination in a working group called the Global IDMP Working Group, the GIDWIG, who brings together EMA, FDA, WHO from Uppsala, and others. And this has resulted in a detailed publication with detailed business rules for presentation and concentration strength of the different types of medicine, such as solid oral form, solid liquid forms, topical products, transdermal inhalers, injections, etc. And all this has resulted in a consensus business rules, and they are not official yet. They are soon to be published, but they can already be informally consulted. So, to summarize the description of the effort of the implementation of IDMP, it's a massive international collaboration to standardize the creation of a global pharmaceutical product identifier, which is based on the substance with the role of precise ingredient, the administrable dose form, and normalized strength. And in addition, there will be a harmonization of the detailed description of national medicinal products, including complex products, biologicals, vaccines, triphasic oral contraceptives, which can be a nightmare to describe, and then the combination products and medicines combined with devices. And the idea is that we have the national drug databases of different countries, France, Belgium, UK, Norway, but also from other regions like Africa, Tunisia, all connected to this global pharmaceutical product ID, substance, dose, form, strength, amlodipine, oral 5 mg, amlodipine basilat, capsule hard 5 mg, linked to the INN prescription, amlodipine oral 5 mg, to the ATC class, and then to the pharmacotherapeutic class, for instance, of the calcium antagonists. The promises of this integration are multiple. First of all, how will we reach that integration? Well, the bulk of the effort lies with the national level in the NCAs, the National Competent Authorities for Marketing, or the drug agency. They assure the implementation of IDMP in the national regulatory systems, prospectively for all new medicines coming through EMA, and then the information will just taken over for the new medicines, together with variation submissions, and retrospectively they need to convert all the older products. It's called the legacy conversion of the older products. So they must make sure that this information trickles through to all national medicinal product dictionaries, vendors of pharmacy systems and physician systems and e-health services, and are applied correctly, and that the rules for creation of global pharmaceutical product identifier are applied correctly. Another effort is at the level of WHO UMC in Uppsala. That's to create the repository of these pharmaceutical products identifiers. So the full list of the available identifiers, global identifiers, publicly accessible and duly maintained. That is a role for Uppsala WHO. And then, of course, there is the effort of the Oslo WHO for drug statistics methodology to make the ATC classification system publicly available through a REST API methodology, and I believe this is almost realized. It will soon be operational. So, with all these partners, ultimately a chain from international classification to national identification is built. WHO Oslo runs the ATC classification and decides that amlodipine is the name for the group of products that contain the moiety amlodipine. This is the code of amlodipine group. The WHO Collaborating Center holds the repository of medicinal products, IDs, and for instance, that's amlodipine basal-out capsule heart 10 milligram is a pharmaceutical product ID, and the national authorizations, national competent authorities make sure that the medicinal product dictionaries are IDMP compliant, so that we know that Amlor 10 milligram from Pfizer is indeed amlodipine basal-out capsule heart 10 milligram. And you see there's a white space here. In order to create a chain, we want to add another partner. An international consortium that will create the INN prescribing grouping, which is a slightly higher aggregated identification of several pharmaceutical IDs. Amlodipine, not looking at the modifier. Oral, not looking at capsule heart or tablet. And of course also 10 milligram. And that gives us an unbreakable chain of the ATC code to the INN prescription, to the pharmaceutical product identifier, to the local product in the countries. For that, these are all the chapters of the ATC code. It's a little bit small to read, but we need to create in some way a link between the ATC code and this repository of PHPIDs. That's a work that can be done on the global level and maintained on the global level, and this will be very important to create that chain of identifiers from the ATC to the PHPID to the local drugs. This is a little bit complicated slide to express the same thing. At the right hand, you see the marketing authorization identification of medicinal products and of medicinal product packs. In the country, medicinal product packs have a national code. They have a GTIN number, a global trade item number, batch numbers. All this can be connected. The national representation of the drug is connected to the pharmaceutical identifier. It's a virtual precise identification at the global level of a national product. And then you have an aggregated identification, which is in fact the INN prescribing. Amlodipine oral 5 milligram. And then the link to the ATC, which classifies the drugs and instead of identifying will give it a meaning as being a drug, amlodipine, as a calcium antagonist. It's really a classification, also introducing therapeutic, chemical, and anatomic elements. In most countries, we have already a link between the medicinal product pack and the ATC, level 5. These packs there is a database in most of the countries that allows the researchers to do drug utilization research. They know what the ITC code is, they know the respective DDD, and they can calculate the defined daily dose per pack and link that to the ATC level. Just as Mohammed showed the example of paracetamol, where a pack of paracetamol contains 3 DDDs per pack. So, in my opinion, these are 2 double loops. One, the current loop where medicinal product packs in the country are in a register that links them to the ATC to allow to make drug statistics in the country. And then the loop where the products will soon be related to the PHPID, ISO-SEN standard, and in that way also to the ATC level. And it will be a system, a method for quality control of that link between medicinal product packs and ATC, and the calculation of the DDD, where we know in many countries can be problematic with many errors. This is another way of showing the same thing. On the right hand, you see the countries and you see drug databases. We have in Europe 27 member states, and each of these member states have on average 5 drug databases. The agency has one. There may be a product dictionaries and drug information center. The eHealth may have a drug database. The vendors have their own databases. So it's very complex, and it just illustrates how important drugs are, that there are so many databases. All these databases can now be linked through the pharmaceutical product global identifier, aggregated to an INN prescription, and then linked to the ATC code, but also to other classifications, Eric's norm, Aniatomical, or SNOMED. And in order to make those steps, if we are at the right hand, we have the virtual medicinal product identified by the PHP-ID, which contains the granular substance, the granular administered dose form, and the strength. This repository is linked to national identifiers of medicinal products in the different countries. An ontology of substance can govern the aggregation of substance with modifier to INN substance. Another ontology of dose form can govern the aggregation of dose forms to oral dose forms, all at solid, all at liquid, for instance, and the strength remains the same, and this can then be linked to international classifications. So building that based on a very robust global identification of medicinal products in the different countries, and then aggregated in a robust and transparent methodology to INN prescriptions, and then linked to the classification. And all this in a multilingual management of labels, so that we can speak English to each other, but also our own language. The benefits for the scientific community would be more quality in the national registers, linking medicinal product packs to ATC, DDD, and DDD per pack. More granular representation of medicinal products in international big data networks. Now it's all based on OMOP and on Eric's norm, and that's not the most precise way of describing medicinal products in pharmacoepi databases. More granular analysis of drug utilization research, and more possibility to aggregate adverse reaction reports in pharmacovigilance by class. The benefits for clinical care. This builds the fabric for linking international pharmacotherapeutic recommendations. We have a lot of them. We have evidence-based point of care information resources, smart guidelines, computer decision support, and all these resources, mostly created in one language in one country, need now to be linked to national drug databases and medicinal product dictionaries. And as you know, 27 member states, each on average with 5 drug databases. If we really want to provide the sometimes excellent applications that are built in universities, for instance, Karolinska Institute building the drug-drug interaction Sphinx database, and it's hardly used outside Sweden. So because of this problem, that the connection to all the databases in the other countries is too complicated. This is an example of a decision support alert. We have a patient with hypertension and initial heart failure. He takes enalapril, which is an ACE inhibitor, and chlorothiazide, it's a diuretic. While traveling abroad, he strained his ankle, and it turns out to be a benign torsion. So it's not broken or not a severe torsion, but it comes with a lot of pain. And he asked the pharmacist for ibuprofen oral 600 milligram. This is a dangerous situation because we have here a renotoxic drug, an ACE inhibitor, a renotoxic drug, a diuretic, and we would add another renotoxic drug, ibuprofen, to the medication list. That would provide what we call the triple wham, and we should never combine an NSAID with these kind of medications. There are three toxic medications. It should use a non-inflammatory painkiller such as paracetamol. If you want to translate, and it is a small reading, but if you want to translate this decision rule in human language in an operational code, then you need about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, about 20 different ATC codes just to create this rule and to make sure that the alert is triggered at the right time. And then we're only talking about expressing this in ATC. It still has to be combined with a trustworthy link to the National Drug Dictionary. So it's not easy, and all these complicated things are needed if we want this to be operational and the applications to be safe in use and safe and really provide real safety to the patient. A reliable connection is needed between complex international representations of pharmaceutical classes and national drug products in many countries. The example was ACE inhibitors and diuretics, but also anticholinergics. We have, of course, the ATC classes from level 5 to level 1, but these classes were constructed for the drug utilization research purposes and are not always clinical. If you want to express anticholinergics in ATC, it will also be a very complex combination of ATC codes, and that is what WHO UMC is doing with creating standard drug groups, telling, for instance, what are the ATC codes to detect anticholinergics. This brings me to the end. Some of the take-home messages. It is possible to build precise links between the International Anatomical Chemical Classification and the IDMP identification. The link is from ATC class level 5 to pharmaceutical product ID, and that is sufficient. If we have that link in a robust and strong way, we can connect everything that we have talked about. The creation of this link will be facilitated to interpose the concept of INN prescribing, and in that way it will also be very instrumental to introduce INN prescribing in the electronic prescription systems of Europe, where it is for the moment not yet present. And it will be a big effort, that's for sure, and require international collaboration. The WHO Center for Oslo, your center, will be involved. Uppsala will be involved. There is a new collaborating center for evidence synthesis and smart guidelines, so that make then the connection between decision support and the clinical care. Many of the other collaborating centers pertaining to medicinal products, and there are still 5 or 6 more, will also be interested. Academia, and I think the support of medical informatics societies would be very handy. The future of the ATC classification is bright, in my opinion, and will remain so, and even be reinforced after the implementation of IDMP. ATC and IDMP are a match made in heaven, with many very interesting use cases: drug information, drug utilization research, pharmacoepidemiology, decision support. As the pace of the process of standardization of the national agencies is steady but slow, It's expected to be finished in 4 to 5 years from now, probably after the UNICOM 2 project. There is ample time to consider a proposal for this proposal on an international scale. And it might be very interesting work packages in the UNICOM 2 follow-up projects, and then we could invite the parties that we named in the previous slide to participate in a new European research project. So thank you for your attention. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Robert. So it was fantastic to explain this very complicated field for us so easily. So it's open for questions and comments. So colleagues, please raise your hand. I can follow.
Shall I stop sharing?
You can maybe stop sharing, Robert, it's maybe easier.
Just to say that there is also a list of references and further connection to further information at the end of the presentation, which will be shared to all the participants. And I will stop sharing now. We can always come back to...
Okay, Christy, or is that from center?
Sorry, I just raised the hand by mistake, but would like to take the opportunity to say a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, colleagues, others, don't be shy. Robert, while people are thinking, could you say a little bit about the difference between...
There's someone...
Sorry again?
No.
Could you please tell us something about the difference between UNICOM 1 project and 2? So what is the objectives of UNICOM 2, and do you have the finance for doing it, and what is the timelines?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. UNICOM, the timeline of UNICOM is that when UNICOM 1 is finished, there will be an evaluation of the project. We guess that this evaluation will be very positive. UNICOM 1 has not realized all the promises that were made in the beginning, but that was because of COVID.
We miss your voice now, Robert.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Do you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, and I hear you. Okay. 11 are agencies, and as you know, the agencies were taken by surprise by COVID and the whole vaccination campaign, and so that made it almost impossible to realize everything that was promised in UNICOM. But everybody knows that, and EMA is so far engaged in the process of going to the implementation that we are absolutely sure that there will be a second part. Before there is a second part, there needs to come a call from the European agency. This call is written for the moment, and it's written inspired by the recommendations that come from UNICOM 1. I guess UNICOM 2 will start, if it starts, in 2025, and will last another 4 years, and will spend another 20 million euros. With a more broad diversification of partners, and I hope a much bigger participation of WHO collaborating centers. That's the point. Yeah. Okay. Is that an answer to your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there anyone from NOMA here?
No, I actually invited one very central person, but they were in this Gedwick in Amsterdam, I guess.
Yeah.
So
NOMA is very, very much engaged. It's one of the partners in Unicom. It's one of the most advanced partners. NOMA received even the IMA Prize for Innovation in IDMP implementation. So they are a very respected partner, and will certainly be again if there is a second project.
Yes, they are heavily involved in this SPOR project with substance products referentials. But the thing is that what is very actual for us in this center is this PHP IDs. So we can couple ATC level 5 to PHP IDs. But what do you think it will be timeline for WHO Uppsala to make this? Because this is a huge work and it may take, I don't know, several years.
WHO Uppsala, as an organization, will take responsibility for the building and the maintenance of the repository of the PHP ID, just the list of global identifiers that exist. At the moment when we bring together all the work of all the agencies and look at the products that have already been completely made compliant, when the description of the product has been completely compliant with IDMP, and we are sure of the PHP ID, then we are about 200 PHP IDs for the moment. And we need to reach 3,000.
Yeah.
So in the next years, that repository will slowly grow. And WHO is building the repository, is building the procedures to apply for new PHP IDs and to maintain this thing. But of course, it does not contain yet the link to ATC. That needs to be added. Adding the link to ATC is not so difficult, but if you want to make that link go over the INN prescription, then we have also to have agreement on two ontologies, the ontology of dose form and the ontology of substance. Substance is not a big problem. Dose form is a little bit bigger as a problem, but not impossible. And there, I think this needs to be a collaborative international effort. And it could be the work package, one of the work packages in Unicom 2, where several partners collaborate to make this really happen and make it. Of course, there will be problems. For instance, some drugs that have some substances that are like Valbutrine that have completely different indications and different brand names for each indication, but the same, and the therapeutic class is either an antidepressant or a smoking stop aid. So these are small things that will need to be solved because there's not a one-to-one relationship to ATC. But most of the time, the relationships from PHP ID to INN prescribing to ATC will be one-to-one, and a few exceptions. But the exceptions need to be managed. That's always the case.
I think we should accelerate our collaboration with WHO Uppsala when these PHP IDs are made, several of them. So Teresa, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very, very nice to hear. I was just wondering if you could comment a little bit on the connection between this standardization work done in Unicom and the implementation of the European health data space. Will it be built upon? Will you expect that these standards will be taken forward in the progress of that work?
Sure, and I think the vehiculum will be the cross-border services. eHealth has what's called EHDSI, the eHealth exchange of data. Prescriptions from a Norwegian pharmacist should be dispensable by an Italian pharmacist. The patient summary, including the medication list, must go through to every 27 member state and be understood. Each country must create a national contact point for e-health, and the national agency needs to provide that contact point with the trusted IDMP data for their national medicinal products. That's the idea, and I think that will also be, because it's e-health, it will also be connected to all the data collections that will be the building stones of the European health data space. So yes, I think these standards will be put forward in all the systems governing drug, so reimbursement, drug utilization research, e-prescription systems, dispensing systems, cross-border services, and the big data networks, including European health data space.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any more hands here. Then Robert, I will thank you very much for this presentation. This was very nice. I'm sure that it's complicated for many of us, all the details, but I think we have got a very good overview over the subject, and it encouraged us to cooperate more with both NUMA and the European authorities for making couplings between the old classification and new, and it will be strengthening this science fields of pharmacoepidemiology and drug statistics. So thank you so much, and look forward to cooperating with you in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
And I see we were well in time. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.